Hey everyone, okay, third time's the charm. I think I have everything working now. I'm gonna do a quick video today for a beginner topic. It will be a coffee cup done in one color. Um, I'll probably do it in a mix of orange and ultramarine blue that will give us a nice warmish gray color. I may put little drops of blue in or orange just as accents. You don't have to. You can even do the whole thing in ultramarine blue. So I'm going to get started. I'll switch over and show you what we're working on. The photo on the right is one that I took a while ago and is it's been made high contrast using no tonizer so that you can see it broken down into the different tones. So that you can see it better on the video, I put numbers next to the different tones. So paper white here is number 1, paper white is number 1. Along the rim would be a number 1, basically around the entire rim. There's a couple of spots. Value number 2 is this lightest gray in the coffee cup, which is where we'll start. 3 is a little bit darker, 4 is the shadow. So you've got 3 here. This shadow, while it looks pretty dark, is really more of this than it is the dark. We'll use this for the darkest dark. Dark in the coffee cup. And I'm going to break it down and paint it pretty quickly. Let me grab a brush. I'm going to try this one. Mixing up a little ultramarine blue. Grabbing some orange to put in with it. And it's kind of a gray, a warm gray. I'm going to add a little bit more blue to it to try and make it a more even. So if you can see that, that's about what I'm working with. That'll be my number 2. And I made that out of ultramarine blue and transparent orange. So how are we going to do this? Let's see. This is the number 2 area, the number 3 and the number 4 areas. Now anywhere that's 2, 3, or 4, we can paint with the number 2 and then we'll add on to that later. So all we're really doing is protecting the white areas by not painting them yet. So I don't have to worry too much on this side. I do want to protect that rim of the cup. But essentially this whole area I can fill in. And it goes like, excuse me. Like I said, carry the tone right into the dark area and into the shadow and then the lighter shadow. And we can even do this area, the back top of the cup, all the way over until it hits that 1 zone. And even where the coffee is. And this could look pretty light on your video. It's certainly a light tone to start with. You don't want it to be too dark yet. You want to give yourself room to get darker. I've mixed up a little bit more. I'm going to change brushes. I'm not liking the way this one is working. It's not one of my regular brushes. I'll go to the number 10 Yelesiev brush, which is the go-to that you see me use in class most of the time. And we can all right. Now, the handle, except for this highlight spot there, and then another highlight spot here and here, you basically can fill in the handle. So we've basically got the number 2s in. Now, there is more. The background here in the quadrant that would be from 12 o'clock to 9 o'clock is a number 2, or basically the lightest tone that we're going to paint. And the reason why we're putting that in is so that this side that's a number 1 stands out a little bit. See, by giving that tone that is definitely here next to the number 1, you give yourself a way for the lightest paper white tone to pop out. And you can be soft and loose about what you do over here. It does not have to come all the way over, but it can. You can leave spots. I'm actually darkening this up a tiny bit as I roll along, because I'm going to put a little bit darker back here. It's already wet, so it's running right to the cup, which is what I want. And this is in monochrome. What I'm going to do is take a wet brush with just water and come over and soften that edge out a little bit so it's not a hard edge. And then throw a little bit more tone close to the cup. It really will just help push that white bit forward. Now, and it's a number 2 back here, so we're going to do the same thing. All right, having this patch back here, even though it shows some tone in the photo, white gives us a little bit of something to play with. It gives us a little bit of a bouncing off point, just some contrast. It helps with the composition. These are things that you'll look for and take advantage of when you're doing your painting. I'm now mixing up a darker tone. Same 2 colors. I'm going to stick with the transparent orange and the ultramarine blue. I'm going to cool that off a little bit with some blue. I'm going to put some water in it because I don't want it that dark yet. All right. Now, this will go into where our number 3 spot is. And don't forget that your number 4 you can cover at the same time. I don't mind the pencil lines showing in this. It helps me to find everything. Now, one thing you'll notice too is that as I'm doing this shadow on the outside is the same tone as the area next to it at the edge of the mug. It just kind of disappears into that shadow. So the 3 goes all the way out there. And we can put the number 3 3 here, like that. The coffee cup is already starting to really pull up some of that dimension. We go right into where the coffee is because that's a darker tone. So like that. And already really we've got a nice, really nice feel to this. It's got dimensionality that we want. All right, we're pulling that out. Now, I do have to add some tone to the handle, but I'm keeping an eye on where those light areas are as well. You don't want to give them up entirely. You want to have them visible. Just to make things a little interesting, because I know that I'm going to go more brown in the tone of where the coffee is. I'm just throwing in a little bit of tone that's got some blue in it, just for interest. And remember, shadows tend to go bluer, so put this here, drag some of the blue out here, and they'll get warmer as they go away from, as more light from other areas starts to fill in that shadow. Okay, it's coming along real nice at this point. I'm gonna move this and move this. See if we can't get that shine off of there. It looks like we're stuck with it. Pick up the bead down here at the bottom so it doesn't run into our lighter tone down here. Now there's a tiny little bit at the lip down here that runs into here. It just separates the bottom of the mug. Doesn't have to be a lot. That is pretty straightforward. Now, always keep an eye on things. This is bleeding out a little bit into this lighter area, so you can simply, let me flip this down. You can simply dry your brush off on your tea towel or paper towel, and then hoover up some of that area while it's still wet so that it doesn't bleed on you and doesn't change the shape. All right. I'm really sorry about this light area in here. It's just from the light. I'm going to have to work on that. The next video I'm going to do too is going to be a similar bit to this exercise, but it's going to be for both the beginners and the more seasoned painters in my group. It's going to be 3 different colored peppers on a cardboard background that we don't have to worry about the cardboard. We can simply make that, keep that white, and just focus on a still life of the 3 peppers. Now, here's the trick. It's going to be pretty cool because this process that you're learning here, the light tone, the middle tone, the dark tone, guess what? It's the same darn thing in the other painting. The only real big difference is that we're going to do it piece by piece. So each of the different peppers will be done separately, light, medium, and dark, and then putting it all together with the shadows. Now, I can come in here, and I've got a darker color mixed up. I can put the coffee into the cup. Your cup always needs to have coffee in it. And see, I made this a warmer color instead of the cooler on the outside of the coffee cup. Now it's really just pushing the gray with a little bit more orange than blue. And this is beading up here. Not a big deal. Just dry off your paintbrush again and use it to pick up the paint. And now taking that dark color, I'm simply adding a little bit more blue to it, keeping it in that same dark range. Now this area here is still pretty wet, but this shadow kind of, because it's a curved subject, also lends itself to coming in that way and not having a totally distinct edge. So that'll actually work just fine for us in this case. So we're putting that dark shadow in. And you see it's oozing right over the pencil line and giving us a soft edge. Now there is a lighter edge here, so I just want to keep some of that. And we run this down to about here. And we do have the dark shadow, so we want to put that in. And that kind of obliterates the end of the cup there. And that has a fairly firm edge on it. You can always dry off your brush a little bit on a towel and just sop some of that up so that it doesn't get out of hand on you. And there is a dark shadow up in here in the cup that we have to get next to the coffee. One thing you'll notice is that I did not hit the shape of the cup as exactly as in the picture. In the picture that I printed out, the coffee cup is a little bit wider. But the only important thing for this at all is that it reads as a coffee cup. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now I'm gonna strengthen that dark color. And it's got more orange in it than blue. And it's still wet in here, so I can just kind of tap it in with the side of my brush. Go around this little highlight that's in the coffee that helps give it that 3D shape and makes it believable. We're gonna just drop some of this darker color around the edges. Okay. Now, in my opinion, the number 2 tone is a little bit too light. It doesn't show off the highlight on that side, so I can add just a little bit more tone to this section. It's good to step back and take a look and decide if you need to make these kinds of adjustments. I'm working a little bit wet into wet. I'm in a little bit of a dicey area here by doing this, but it's okay. I think the coffee cup's got a real nice feel. I want to give it some more dimension, so I'm going to come in darker back here behind the rim. So like that. Now, while it's still wet, just dry your brush out and let it absorb some of that so that it's not a super hard edge. And then you can bring it down along the coffee cup a little bit to something like that. Now I'm wetting my brush, and just while that edge is still wet, just fading it out. So this is a good exercise for a couple of things. It's a good exercise for value, but it's really also a good exercise for practicing your brush control. This side of the brush, I mean of the handle, definitely has a dark shadow. So I'm putting that in now. Tone that out a little bit, just soften it, just grab it with a dry brush a little bit in different areas just to give it a little bit of interest. If you don't want this edge to be too hard while it's still wet, just you can dab it with a paper towel, but you can see that white edge definitely comes forward from the dark edge. We've worked with two colors and two colors only. Now that is probably still a little bit too wet, but I'm going to go for it anyway and just get the last shadow, the darker shadow of the coffee cup in here. Give it some more darkness. Maybe it is dry enough. It's definitely acting okay. Grab a little bit more paint into my brush. Remember that this shadow juts out from the coffee cup and really hides the edge. It just kind of melts into that shadow. And that's a cast shadow, so it's got a harder edge. I'm just going to soften it a little bit by taking a damp brush next to it and just pick it up a little bit. And then while we have this dark here, I'm going to come with this at the very bottom under here and just paint that. And I'm going to break it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be there all the way. Again, this was transparent orange and ultramarine blue. And for interest, I've shifted them back and forth a little bit. that's really our darkest shadow. We need to put some of it here. Now, there is a little tiny light line between the handle and the shadow, so you want to keep that right there. You don't want to paint right up to it. You want to give yourself a little teeny tiny gap. This needs to get darkened. None of this needs to be perfect. Just keep looking back at your picture. There. And there you have it. That is our 4-value, really one color, and all I did was just push the color back and forth between the cool color that made it up and the ultramarine blue and the orange. And what I'm gonna do is, this highlight really in the picture here is more of a 3 or a 2 than it is the 1. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to pick this up before it runs down the mug. And there's a little tiny darkish line at the top of the mug that gives it a little tiny bit of shape. My hands are shaking, but I'm just going to knock that out. That might be too dark, so I just hit it with my paper towel. Dry out my brush and just pick up this bead down here. But there you have it. We've got 1 is the lightest tone, 2, 3, and 4. And the 4 is creeping into the 3 a little bit more than I'd like. It's okay. It's okay. I can simply wet it and then dab at the edge just a little bit. It adds a little bit of interest to it. But there we go. That's our coffee cup. 28 minutes, so we just about made it to our 30-minute mark. This is a great little exercise, something I recommend drawing the cup. You get to practice your drawing skills, breaking down the values a couple of times, trying to see the light shapes and the dark shapes and where you can connect them together. And in looking at this here, actually, this shadow, this cast shadow, still needs to be darker. It's darker than that. So I'm just going to come in here. As I say goodbye, I'm simply going to, there, that's a little bit more readable is what we were trying to do. So there's your coffee cup. Go ahead and make one, make 2, do it before class next week, and we'll look at them before we get started. Happy painting, and I'll see you in the classroom.